It's lovely to meet you.
When I met Nadine for the first time, I could see a beautiful person locked in to an external frame that had taken on so much weight. And so working together to free that weight was my goal. One of the things I really wanted to address was the way that we feel about the financial conversation. A financial person walks in, and generally it's this dun 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 kind of sound, right? Like of this stress, this anxiety, because we can often look at our finances from a position of judgment. Right? Where we're judging ourselves, we're ridiculing ourselves. And
like, how did you get that? Where did all of that go? Like, yeah, for sure.
exactly.
Yeah. A lot of negative self-talk.
A lot of negative self-talk. And when we're in that negative self-talk, right? How do we feel about ourselves in the financial conversation?
Negative, defeated, defeated, definitely defeated. But I'm so hopeful. I have some amazing projects on the go, and I know what my finances were, I know what they are, and I know what they can be. So I'm extremely hopeful and eager to work with you to hear all the strategies that you can offer.
Good. Well, I'm excited for that because one of the key things that we're going to do is add in a bit of a secret ingredient to finances. So if you notice, we started talking about the way that you feel first. That was the key thing I wanted to start to address. The reason for it is that, you know how you were saying that, when we're looking at our finances and we have all this negative self-talk and we can feel defeated.
Yes.
That feeling isn't isolated to a singular moment or a singular conversation, right? It
carries through and overlaps absolutely in other areas of your life.
And so if we don't acknowledge that here, right, then I'm not truly being of service to you, right?
My journey has been very much like this. I've owned 2 homes previously when I was in the corporate world, working, I wouldn't even say 9 to 5, I would say 7 to 10, running after Go Train and running downtown. However, my circumstances changed gradually and quite drastically. My kids needed me closer to home. There are all sorts of challenges presenting itself. So in so doing, the financials kind of started to go downhill, right? Because without a regular income coming in, everything can fall apart. And I started renting. And I've moved more times than I care to count, at least 13, 14 times, because I kept renting new homes to keep the kids in the same school. And where I lived in Northeast Brampton, there's no apartments, so it's new homes, and every 2 years homes sell, and I move, and I've moved, and I've moved, and I've moved, and I've moved. And so it's really, I think that the act of that displacement, it's really placed a huge burden on, when I look back over the trajectory of mine and the children's lives, the upheaval, the moving, it's been quite daunting, right? And so I stepped out on a limb with one of the checks that I received from my entrepreneurial, because I'm now an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur since 2008, somewhere thereabouts. Was when I walked away from corporate and decided that I was just going to make a leap of faith. The house closes next year, and so that gives me ample time to tighten up everything and get it done. And so I chose the long closing because you have the incremental payments and you get a chance to kind of shore up your finances to ensure that everything closes. And so that's what I'm doing.
Okay, good. So this new home, from everything I've heard from you, represents a lot for you.
Absolutely, it does.
Share with me in some words what it represents.
It's exciting. It's discipline. When I think of it, I think of discipline. I think of settling, getting rid of the chaotic upheavaling of lives. So settling, excited. It also allows me to become disciplined in areas where I've not been.
What does that mean?
So, like the excessive things that I would buy, namely clothing, bringing that all the way in, because Lord knows I do not need clothes. Right? So just the frivolous things that I just been kind of wasting money on, it's allowing me to become more disciplined because I have obligations to meet. The house has to close.
So we're going to, how does it sound? We utilize the home as the anchor for our conversation.
Absolutely.
So now, in using the home as the anchor for our conversation, there's a past, present, future.
Yes.
We're going to honor all three. Are you in?
Yes.
Good. In the words that you used, you said exciting, you said discipline, and you said settling. Behind each of these words, these aren't IQ words, they're EQ words, right? Behind each of these words is a feeling. Would you agree?
Yes.
This is why the key thing I'm going to be asking you about is in the way that you feel about your finances, because now this is how we're going to bridge over to the appropriate IQ that's long term. So Nadine, if I asked you, let's just use a parallel idea here on weight. Okay? So as women, we hear a lot about our weight, our size, the way we appear. Fair to say?
Yes.
So if I'm on a health journey, I don't want to say I'm not a fan of weight loss. I am a fan of release. Yeah, and the priority being health. That's my personal view. So let's just say I'm starting my my health journey, and the first thing the person I'm looking to guide me says to me is, look in front of yourself. Look in the mirror, rather, in front of a mirror at yourself, and say all the things that are wrong with you. Imagine that for a moment. How does it feel?
Disappointing. Disappointing. I would say that's the one word that kind of just jumps out at me. Just disappointed at the way in which I've managed things in the past, financial things, I mean. And
so now, if all we focus on is the disappointment, because that's a really, that's a heavy word, is that fair to say?
Yes.
And that's a weight.
It totally is.
And so, if I came in and I didn't honor that, what's the likelihood of continued success, long-term continued success?
If we didn't honor we have to acknowledge like all the things, all the feelings, all of them are valid, right? And so that disappointment is a weight that I carry. And so it's something that I have to kind of lay out there as opposed to hiding it, to say, all is well, it's not, all is not well. There's a lot of negative emotions attached to things that's happened in the past that kind of hampers the present, and so it has to be dealt with in order to kind of go forward, yeah.
And how often, so you said it, you nailed it, it has to be dealt with, and by dealt with, I mean embraced, right?
Yes.
In order to move forward. How often do we acknowledge, embrace, and work through our emotions when it comes to our finances. Is that the norm? Has it been the norm for you?
It hasn't. It really hasn't.
You're the person that matters.
Yeah.
You're the person I want to hear from, right? You're right. So it's not the norm. It hasn't been the norm for you. Biggest thing I want you to know is that you're not alone. It's simply not the norm. But by sharing your story, by sharing your journey, your emotional voice, which is what's uniquely yours, which is what you share in your poetry,
Right.
you allow others to know that they're not alone.
Absolutely.
So, in focusing and anchoring in the excitement, the discipline, the settling in, the biggest thing I want to offer you is the platform for long-term continued success. And the secret ingredient to that, do you think, is the IQ or the EQ of money? The way you feel or the facts and the figures? What do you think?
The way you feel.
Why do you think
Absolutely.
that?
Because that governs everything.
100% right.
Absolutely.
So that's why we're going to focus on that, and then we're going to bridge it over to the IQ. Sound fair? Okay, good. So you mentioned a really key word on the home, and that was obligations.
Yes.
When you say the word obligations, how do you feel?
I'm okay with it. Obligations are a fact of life.
Okay.
Right? I'm totally okay with it. It's a conscious choice that I've made for myself. I wasn't coerced into it. When you think of obligation, can have a lot of negative connotation as well, because like if I'm obligated to pay child support, let's say, for example, right? When I think of obligation, that's another thing that pops to mind. But an obligation, to meet an obligation, to realize a goal, so that there's a positive side to it.
Yeah.
It's a decision that I consciously made for myself and my family, and I'm obligated to honor that.
So decision is a really great positive word, right? Fueled with positive emotion. How do you feel about the word commitment versus obligation?
It's a more positive word than obligation. Obligation has some kind of negative connotation to it, but a commitment it's all positive, right?
So here's why. So you're going to learn about me that I'm a big fan of words, right? Because behind words are feelings and beliefs.
Yes.
Right? And on the path forward, the biggest thing for you is
positive self-talk.
And in that positive self-talk, I don't mean toxic positivity, right? Where we ignore everything else. No, acknowledging it and working through it.
Right.
Right? But in acknowledging it rather and working through it, the biggest thing is knowing who the priority is. So in obligation, the priority can often be external, right? I have an obligation to this. I have an obligation to that person, thing, whatever it may be, right? That's external. But what we're doing here is taking your financial power back, right? And so commitment belongs to you.
You, right.
And so that's overarching, right? That it's finances from the inside out now. So that's why I wanted to know how you felt about the word commitment versus obligation.
Understood.
Is it a deal?
Definitely.
All right. So decision to commitment. Okay. Now I said the word commitment actually brings me to something I wanted to talk with you about today. I said that we would be honoring past, present, future. Talk with me about your money experiences?
It's been a lot of in and out. A lot of that.
What do you mean by that?
I've made good money, but I've also put out good money.
There's a lot of stories behind each of those two statements.
Yes, without a doubt.
And if you're willing, I'd love to hear them. Share with me about what making good money meant to you. Share with me about those experiences.
So as an entrepreneur, I have seen where, when I was in corporate, how in one day, not even one day, 1 hour, I'm able to make the kind of money I would make in a month working in corporate in an hour. It's brought a sense of pride, like, you can do this, my goodness. Like, so a lot of pride in, coming up with a creative idea and executing. So from invoice to, from idea to invoicing, right? So coming up with the idea and then invoicing and taking it into the bank. So there's been a lot of pride with that process, like, and kind of disbelief at times, like, oh my God, I can't even believe I did that. Like, there's so much potential here. So I get really excited for that. But then there's, oftentimes a lot of things happening externally around me, kind of railroad railroad the process of like honoring that money that I'd gotten, that I'd worked so hard to get. So what tends to happen is, to kind of appease the emotional aspect of what's going on externally, I then abuse the money, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense.
And then that leaves me feeling dejected and disappointed, right? So there's a lot of that happens, kind of like cyclical, is that the word?
It is,
Yeah.
Share with me, if you're willing, a story around where, and it doesn't have to be when you were an entrepreneur. Could have been before
right?
then, where you made good money, to utilize your words, right? Made good money, and then an external factor came in.
It's probably attached to a couple of big purchases that I've made, kind of like randomly, and then when I had remorse, it was too late because the sale was final and I could only do an exchange as opposed to a refund. I'd probably say there's a couple Gucci necklaces that I own, and I'd probably say that the second Gucci necklace purchase was kind of one of those things. This being the second, I kind of wear it every day as a reminder of what not to do. Just some emotional stuff that was happening, and it was just a way of, I convinced myself that, it's a treat, you deserve this, and, made that sort of large, unnecessary purchase, and then it couldn't be returned. So, yeah, I'd say that's kind of one example that I can think of.
So the Gucci necklace has become
a symbol, a reminder. I wear it a lot. To remind myself, of my goals, what I want to accomplish, and what I don't want to be doing with my money.
What I don't want. Do you feel that this is a positive or negative statement?
Positive.
Why?
Because it reminds me. So I guess it could be both positive and negative, right? Because it's kind of like reminding myself of a negative action, but sort of using that negative action to propel me towards positive, if that makes sense, or a more positive outcome for the future. So kind of using it as a symbol of what not to do in order to achieve something.
Good. What not to do in order to achieve something. Would you agree that that's the way we've been taught to look at our finances, the what not to do?
I would say so, yeah.
And then a few moments ago, we were talking about standing in front of a mirror and saying all the things that, are wrong with us, or looking at all the things that are wrong with us, right? So that is parallel to exactly this. This is the way we've been taught to think about our finances, the what not to do. When I'm looking at what not to do, how do I feel about my past? How do I feel about myself within my past?
Judgmental, negative. There's a negative connotation to that for sure.
Right? And so this is where I can, if we go back to the idea of the parallel, I can really easily lose weight or start to go to the gym or start my fitness journey. But then how long is it going to last when I'm focusing on what I don't want? So here's the thought. I have a theory that I share. I call it the Pothole Theory. And if you're driving along the road, if you picture it with me, if you're driving along the road and there's a pothole in the road,
Okay.
right? And as you're driving, all you're focused on is that pothole. I don't want to hit that pothole. I don't want to hit that pothole. I don't want to hit that pothole. What do you think is going to happen?
You might very well hit the pothole because you're so distracted.
Absolutely. What we're focused on is what we end up
Doing or becoming, yeah.
And so what I want to help you focus on is what you do want. And so going back to this anchor of the excitement, right?
Settling.
The settling, that decision and that commitment. Do you feel the difference between decision and commitment? The difference between the feelings of those words versus what I don't want?
Definitely.
Right? Good. So the power behind all of this resides in your story, right? These word associations come from your story. So the more of your story we connect with, the more of a long-term success we'll have. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, great. The negative emotional associations were showing up in reminders that Nadine has for herself. An example of that is in a Gucci necklace that she wears to remind her of what she doesn't want. That was taking up space. Another thing that is taking up space are the clothes in Nadine's room. Share with me your immediate financial goal as we stand in this space.
My immediate financial goal is to meet all my commitments, not obligations.
Yay!
Is to meet all my commitments. There's incremental payments that have to go towards the home that I've bought, and to ensure that at all that I'm hitting all of the the deadlines and, looking forward towards the end goal.
Do you believe you're going to do it?
Oh, I don't have a choice.
I believe you're going to do it. When I say the word make money, what kind of emotional associations immediately surface for you? What words represent that? Pride, okay? Accomplished, good. Determination, good. Anything else surface for you there?
Kind of fear. There's a fear because of kind of knowing the pattern of how I have spent in the past. The fear of, am I going to be able to retain what I've made? So kind of like there's a bit of fear, I think, around that.
What I want to ask you to do is to acknowledge yourself for that. That's a big thing to be sharing, right? Because fear around money is prevalent, it doesn't just exist for so many of us, it's prevalent for so many of us.
Right.
And fear is something that can overtake,
without a doubt,
all these, right? And so often, that's how then it will carry over.
The spend.
Into
It manifests, right? Because you're fearful that you might spend it, you end up spending it.
Right. So when we say the word spend,
Right.
what emotional associations do you have here?
I think disappointment is the first one that kind of comes to mind. So disappointed. Frivolous. Unnecessary. And I mean, I know these are just words. Unnecessary is not an emotion, but these are the words that I can think of, right?
Nadine, this is perfect. Behind unnecessary, there's a feeling.
Yes.
How do you feel about yourself when you say the word unnecessary? You don't have to write it,
Kind
you
of like
can say
disappointed.
it. Yeah.
Disappointed. There's a lot of disappointment around how I have spent money.
And in the frivolous and unnecessary, where do you see this? And what purchases do you see this in today?
This necklace.
Necklace, okay.
6 stools as opposed to 2 or 4. A lot of things. A lot of clothes, like
A lot of clothes.
clothes on top of clothes that still has a tag sitting on them. Yeah.
So, clothes, stools, around the house, we're going to see the emotional associations with the idea of spend materializing.
Yes.
Right? So this is where we can really see finances from the inside out, right? It started with the way that we feel, and then it materializes in our outside world,
Yes.
right? So if it started from the inside out, where it changes
Is from the inside, yeah.
is from the inside out, exactly, right? So that's the focus.
Yes.
Because behind make, while there are a lot of societal views that share this idea, right? In fact, that's where we often internalize it from, right? But this belongs uniquely to you. It belongs uniquely to everyone. This is where we feel the most alone, in fear, right? And it comes over here. So we ultimately, with make, have a negative, right? We have a negative emotional association. With spend, we have a negative emotional association.
Feels like a double negative.
Right? Yeah. But then what happens? If I come and I'm only saying to you the same thing, how are we going to get a different result?
We're not.
We're not. We've got to change finances from the inside out. What we say, the way we feel, what we believe, different result. Change the feeling, change the belief, change the result. So let's talk about different words, right? Because, actually give me one more second, because let's just say what happens here, right? Is we try and insert, we want to change this, right? Would you say that these are the words we use in the financial industry?
Absolutely.
In this idea, in this cycle,
right,
is savings adding to this cycle, or is it taking away from something?
It's definitely adding, because you're retaining, what you've made, and it's adding to your sense of self-worth and accomplishment, and that feeling of defeat is kind of being dissipated, right? So definitely it's a positive.
It's not about making money, spending it, and maybe saving it. It's about earning, growing, and enjoying. I want to talk about the key emotions that you have that come up for you with each of these words, one at a time. So you have your marker here, and if you could share with me, when you hear the word earn, what do you immediately feel? What's your emotional association there?
Pride.
Pride. And with the word grow, what do you feel?
Discipline.
Beautiful. Enjoy. Deserving. I love this. On so many levels, I love this. And a key reason is these words are connected to the words, your anchor words that you shared for your home.
Right.
Discipline, pride in your home.
Deserving.
Being deserving.
Mm-hmm.
Positive or negative emotional associations?
Positive, undoubtedly.
Positive, right? Now, the negative emotional associations that were here,
right,
with make, spend, and to a certain extent save, were those representative of you? Truly representative of you?
I would say of the me I'm leaving behind.
The you you're leaving behind. Why are you leaving that you behind?
Because it's negative. It manifests itself in a lot of hurtful ways, like,
What's an example?
The clutter, the clothes, the excessive spending of money on frivolous things.
And so what you're seeing, what you're connecting with there, is that the internal shows up in our external space.
Without a doubt.
So when we start to shift the internal space,
right,
we can shift the external as
Undoubtedly.
well. So how do we get here, right? How do we get from make, spend, maybe save, over to your balance of earn, grow, and enjoy. Well, one of the things I shared with you in our last conversation was that there are riches in your story
Right.
that will create the richness of your path forward. Your story is in what I call the pyramid of financial influences. So I'm going to draw it out here. Your story started in your household,
Yes.
right? So your upbringing. But your upbringing, your household, the messaging that you received there started somewhere, right? That's where your origin story comes into play, right? Those messages that were passed down from generations past and made current. Your story doesn't stop there, because as you continue to grow up, and as I share this, I'd love for you to, on the screen of your mind, start to picture your story, right? As you start to grow up, you were influenced by the community around you,
No doubt.
right? Then societal messaging started to come into play, right? The way we are compared, our views of money, what money does to people, these are all bigger societal messages, right? Then we bring these 3 layers into our committed romantic relationships that have their own influences as well. And this all forms our emotional influences, right? These are all our emotions. So this layer has been missing from the financial conversation. And if all I did was start with the numbers, I've missed the most important person. I've missed Nadine. Because this is the ticket to how you earn with meaning. You grow with value, and you enjoy it all with purpose. Who defines each of these things?
I do.
You do, exactly, right? Who else?
People I surround myself with.
They help to amplify your voice.
Yes.
The key thing is no one else defines it but you. And so when you're defining it, right, everything else you'll choose to amplify it. So that's where we start to connect with your pyramid of financial influences. So I'd love for you to share with me about your upbringing and a story that we share in common, which is an immigration story. And so I'd love to hear more of yours.
Absolutely. So I'm an immigrant child. My mom left my brother and I with 11 auntie and uncles and grandparents and came to Canada. She left me as a baby and I joined her at 15. My brother and I came here when I was 15 years old. So my life in Jamaica is very rich in the countryside. We were poor in the country, but extremely rich in that the whole land around, there was so much land around us, was our playground in the daytime. At nights, did a lot of reading under the kerosene oil lamp. I was I was a very spoiled child in that my mom was the first person to have left the island, and so she would send back all the things, and then I came here at 15 and a whole new chapter started. The relationship with my mom was very rough for a number of years because I didn't know who she was. She was a complete stranger to me. She didn't have traveling privileges, so I didn't meet her until I was 15. So you can only imagine, as a teenager, a whole new society, a whole new world. It was a struggle in those early years. Church became my refuge. It also became my downfall in that I started going to church like right away after meeting friends at school. They invited me to church and so forth. Church married me off as a child, essentially. I started dating my ex-husband, and we were married, but I don't even think we dated for 6 months. And we were down the altar. I was wearing another church sister's dress who had just married 2 weeks previous. So there were like maybe, I don't know, 20 different marriages of the kind. So as soon as you start dating, you have to have intentions and the rest. And so it kind of ruined my life in a way, that whole experience, because I married a stranger, and it's just been quite nightmarish since then. There's been a lot. I found if it didn't happen, I don't think I would have found poetry. So there's that positive, and then I wouldn't have 3 beautiful children as well. So, you know, there's good and bad, but there was quite a bit of trauma that the whole experience brought into my life.
So hard to do it solo, fear of being on your own, and you were saying you were a single mom.
Very much in the truest sense of the word.
And so when then did you become a single mom?
Very soon after getting married. So I married at 20. My son was born at 22, sorry. My daughter was born at 24. My youngest was born at 25. And, you know, so in between my oldest and my daughter, the whole separation became a reality. And so I've done it alone now for, if Danielle's 28, for 28 and a half, 29 years.
Almost 3 decades.
Yes.
Completely on your own. So you were completely on your own in raising your children.
Yes.
And to a certain extent, as a child, you were also on your own, right? Your mom was here, and while that was well-meaning, right, here building a life,
future, right.
The foundation for you
Absolutely.
to come and build a future.
Right. You understand that as an adult, but as a child, you do not, right? It's like, right?
Right now, there is something that is taking up space.
Yes.
And it's here, right? So we saw it in your story, and it's coming out here. So to shift over to your self-expression, we're going to address this fear, okay? So within your story, what's taking up space is that fear, but we've got to get to the source of it, right? So within our story, there's more that we tell ourselves, right? It's what we say to ourselves that ends up having a lot of power. So we started to see the power in words,
Right.
between make, spend, save. We started to then hear your voice through self-expression of earn, grow, and enjoy.
Right.
So let's start to break down the stories we tell ourselves in our internal dialogue. So I want to start to pull this together for you from the conversations that we've had so far. Where are we seeing your story, the fear connected within your story, in what you say? So here's something that you said of being a renter, right? I'm a renter. I've been a renter. Now, in what we say to ourselves, there's a feeling that's connected to that.
Right.
That feeling repeated in our thoughts over and over creates a belief, and then we see that in our results, right? You don't want to be a renter anymore.
Not at all.
You want to be
A homeowner.
an owner.
Yes.
So to shift over to being an owner, this is what we've really got to address. If all I did was just focus on the results, the financial results, I've missed the key. I've missed your voice, your journey, the way that you feel, and what you believe. That's what dictates the results.
Right.
So let's address this then. And as we address it, we honor the way that you feel. We embrace it. We understand the belief at its root. And in doing that, we can shift. Being a renter, how does that make you feel? If you write the feeling under, what emotion comes up?
Unsettling.
Unsettling. What's the belief? What do you believe about yourself
As a renter,
if you view yourself as always being a renter?
I won't be able to get beyond being a renter. So being able to
Stagnant.
to move from that position on.
So belief of being locked in, being stagnant?
Yes.
There it is. So being locked in.
So
And then what do you think your results
I
long-term
will
will be?
remain locked in.
Yes. So do you see how what we say to ourselves
Right.
directly impacts what we feel, and that's repeated to then create the belief, right? Now, shifting from a renter to an owner, we can start to see comes from the inside out, right? So, if we start to shift to a new dialogue, I am an owner. What's the feeling?
Pride.
Pride.
Undoubtedly. Settled.
Do you see how as soon as we start talking about something that honors your voice, you keep going on the feeling? When we were talking about make, spend, maybe save, you really had to think about it. When we started to talk about being a renter, it took that,
while.
right? It was this weight, this heaviness. The moment we start to honor your voice, Nadine shows up. So this is what we want to continue to do, right? So the feeling of pride, being settled. What belief about Nadine comes up with that?
Kind of like a can do. And having faith, I would say, in self.
Faith, can do, faith, right? So in the last one, the belief was almost defeat, right? With being a renter. That fear leading to the defeat. Now, that pride is in who?
In myself.
Exactly, which leads to the can do. Now, what do you think the long-term result is going to be.
It will be done.
It will be done.
Yes.
So let's get to now the route, the path that the fear took, right? So that we can shift over to being an owner. Because we have two key, thank you. We have two key things here. We want to shift from being a renter,
right, to an owner.
Yes. Now, the key thing you talked about in being a renter was fear. Fear is something so many of us share when it comes to money. The key thing, though, is that the path for each of us is unique.
Absolutely.
Your path is unique. Now, one of the things you shared with me at the source of the fear, you shared about not having your mom at a young age. You had so much, right? But honoring the feeling of not having your mom. And then not having the father of the children there.
Right.
Right?
And when we say not having him there, divorces happen every day. So having him there in a fatherly role.
Having him there in yes, absolutely. Thank you for honoring your story. Because yes, not having him there in a fatherly role, and in both cases, a feeling
of abandonment, absolutely.
All connected. Would you agree?
Yes.
But this is where we want to shift. Nadine, can I see fear? Do we see it? Is it something that is external or that is internal?
It's internal, but it can also manifest itself in external ways.
Absolutely it can. Yes. But where it starts...
It's definitely inside.
It's definitely inside. So where's my solution?
Inside.
Inside. And just as I can't see fear, you can choose...
Faith.
Faith in who, Nadine?
Myself.
Yes. Because when you were talking about being an owner, the faith was in you. The can-do, the pride was yours. The can-do was yours. This is your voice.
Absolutely.
It's your internal space that creates the external. And now we move from abandonment to a word you and I talked about in our last conversation.
Commitment.
Commitment. Now that I finished the sessions with Nadine, I feel that she is much more connected to her voice and her inner power. It's showing up in the words that she uses. It's showing up with her default associations that she connects to right away. Now, I know that she has a strong foundation to continue to build from as an owner with faith and commitment in herself from the inside out. Now, entering this room with you, I feel a very different energy. This is now the solution. What was once the problem is now the solution.
Absolutely. We're halfway there, I would say.
We're on the journey.
We're on the journey, yes.
We're always on the journey. And so with that, I would love to gift you something that I hope will help you on your journey and help you anchor those positive emotions that we've been connected to together.
Thank you. Can I open it?
Yes, I would love that, please.
I give myself the grace of understanding with a commitment to move forward. This is really beautiful. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Nadine, I am sending you so much love, belief, and appreciation in who you are. Your path forward is connected to the riches of your story, and you create the richness of your path forward. In any moment that you might not believe in yourself, I ask you to borrow my belief. In a time that you do believe in yourself, I ask you to amplify your belief with mine in you. You are such a powerful, beautiful light in this world. And your financial power amplifies all of that. You are deserving, my friend, and so is your voice.